The Night We Shouldn't Have Survived. Tell Late Night Story. Welcome to DTC, the place of the brave. Some nights change everything. Some nights test the limits of fate. And then there's the night we shouldn't have survived. A night filled with mystery, terror, and the unexplainable. A night where the line between life and death blurred into oblivion. What really happened? Why were we the ones who made it out? And most importantly, what did we leave behind? Join us as we dive into the unknown, uncover the untold, and face the darkness head on. This is DTC, the place of the brave. Are you brave enough to step in? The air was crisp, and the streets were eerily silent in the small Eastern European neighborhood where I was staying at my friend Ava's house for the night. It was supposed to be an ordinary sleepover, movies, snacks, and whispered secrets under dim lights. But as the hours passed, the night took an unexpected turn. Ava, exhausted from the day's activities, had already drifted into a deep sleep, wrapped in her blanket, her slow and steady breathing, the only sound in the quiet room. Meanwhile, my other friend Abigail and I remained wide awake, restless, and brimming with energy. The excitement of the night still lingered in our veins, making it impossible to close our eyes and surrender to sleep. As we lay there in the dim glow of Ava's bedside lamp, boredom began to creep in. We exchanged glances, knowing we both wanted to do something more thrilling than simply lying there in the dark. That was when an idea struck us, one that, in hindsight, was reckless, dangerous, and entirely foolish. "Let's sneak out and take a walk to the river," Abigail whispered, a mischievous grin spreading across her face. I hesitated for a moment, knowing full well that it was a bad idea. But the thrill of adventure, the temptation of doing something forbidden, was too strong to resist. With our minds set on the plan, we quietly slipped out of our sleeping bags, careful not to make a sound that might wake Ava. The old wooden floor creaked beneath our feet as we tiptoed toward the window, pausing every few seconds to ensure Ava remained undisturbed. With bated breath, we slowly opened the window, wincing as it let out a soft groan in protest. A gust of cool night air rushed in, sending shivers down our spines, not from the cold, but from the exhilarating realization that we were actually going through with this. Without another thought, we climbed out into the night, completely unaware of what lay ahead. The plan was simple: walk straight down the road until we reached the river. No detours, no unnecessary stops, just a quick adventure before sneaking back into Ava's house, hopefully unnoticed. As we stepped onto the quiet street, a wave of exhilaration washed over us. The thrill of sneaking out in the dead of night made the world feel different, almost unreal. The houses stood in eerie silence, their windows dark and lifeless, as if the entire neighborhood was frozen in time. The only sounds were the soft rustling of trees in the cold night breeze and the faint echo of our footsteps on the pavement. The streetlights flickered dimly above us, casting long shadows that danced across the pavement. A stray cat darted past, disappearing into the bushes, making me jump slightly. Abigail chuckled at my reaction, nudging me playfully. "Scared already?" she teased, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not scared," I muttered, though my heart was still racing. I wasn't afraid of the dark, but there was something unsettling about how empty and quiet everything felt. It was like we were the only two people left in the world. As we neared the river, the air became cooler, and the faint scent of damp earth and water drifted toward us. The riverbank was lined with trees, their bare branches swaying gently in the wind. Just beyond them was a small park with a rusty swing set and a couple of benches, a place we had visited countless times during the day, but never at night. "This is perfect," Abigail whispered as we made our way to the swings. We found a secluded spot near the swing set and leaned against its cool metal frame, letting the night surround us. The silence was peaceful, yet tinged with an unspoken tension. the kind that comes with doing something you know you shouldn't. Abigail pulled a cigarette from her jacket pocket and lit it with a flick of her lighter. The tiny flame flared to life for a moment before disappearing, leaving only the faint orange glow at the tip of the cigarette. She took a slow drag and passed it to me. I hesitated. I wasn't a smoker, but in that moment it felt like the kind of thing you did when you were sneaking out in the middle of the night, breaking rules for the sake of it. I took a small puff, coughing immediately, which sent Abigail into a fit of silent laughter. We sat there for what felt like hours, whispering about boys, school, and our plans for the future. Every now and then we would fall into a comfortable silence, simply listening to the gentle lapping of the river against the shore. Neither of us paid much attention to the time passing. We had no idea that our carefree adventure was about to take a terrifying turn. At some point, in the midst of our quiet conversation and occasional laughter, I became aware of a presence. A strange, creeping sensation crawled up my spine, the kind that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. I glanced toward the entrance of the park, my heart skipping a beat. A man stood there, partially obscured by the dim glow of a distant streetlight. He was middle-aged, dressed in dark clothing, and holding a cigarette between his fingers. But it wasn't the fact that he was there that unsettled me. It was the way he was standing completely still, just watching us. At first I tried to dismiss it. Maybe he was just another night owl, someone who, like us, enjoyed the quiet of the late hours. Perhaps he was simply lost in thought. But as the seconds stretched on, my unease deepened. He wasn't just glancing at us in passing, he was staring. I nudged Abigail, my voice barely above a whisper. "Don't look now, but there's a guy at the entrance. He's been standing there for a while." Abigail, always the braver one, casually flicked the cigarette away and stretched, using the movement as an excuse to steal a quick glance. When she turned back to me, her expression was no longer carefree. "Yeah, that's not normal," she murmured, her voice tight. A heaviness settled between us. We both knew, without saying it outright, that this was not a good situation. The air around us felt thicker, like the night itself had changed. We needed to leave. Trying to act natural, we stood up and dusted ourselves off, as if we had simply decided it was time to go home. Neither of us spoke, but we silently agreed on the same strategy. Don't run. Don't make it obvious that we were afraid. Just walk. As we stepped out of the park, I resisted the overwhelming urge to turn around, to check if he was still there. The logical part of my brain told me that if we acted like we weren't scared, he would ignore us. But something deep in my gut told me that wasn't the case. After a few more steps, I couldn't help myself. I glanced back over my shoulder, my pulse pounding in my ears. My breath hitched. The man was no longer standing at the entrance. Instead, I saw him walking toward a van parked nearby, a wide, dark-colored vehicle that I hadn't noticed before. He opened the driver's side door but didn't get in right away. Instead, he hesitated, watching us, as if waiting for something. My blood ran cold. "Abigail," I whispered urgently, my voice trembling. "He's getting into a van." Abigail didn't respond, but I could see her jaw tighten, her pace quickening ever so slightly. I did the same, my heart slamming against my ribs. The safe, thrilling adventure we had set out on suddenly felt like a terrible mistake. The night, which had once seemed so peaceful and full of excitement, now felt dangerous, like we had stepped into something we weren't supposed to. We needed to get out of there, and fast. But I had the sinking feeling that it wasn't going to be that easy. The low hum of an engine broke the silence of the night. My stomach twisted as I watched the van pull out from its parking spot, its headlights flickering on. It wasn't speeding toward us or making any sudden moves, but it was following us. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe he was just heading home. But deep down, I knew better. The van kept a steady pace, never too close, never too far, just lingering at a distance. It was as if whoever was inside wanted us to know they were there, wanted us to feel the pressure of their presence. Every few seconds I stole a glance over my shoulder, hoping, praying that they had turned down another road. But they didn't. Abigail and I walked in tense silence, our hurried footsteps echoing against the empty pavement. Neither of us spoke, but I could feel the weight of our shared fear hanging in the air. We had to get back to Ava's house. That was all that mattered. The problem was, we had no idea where we were. At first, we had been so sure we were heading in the right direction. We had taken the same road we came from, hadn't we? But the further we walked, the less familiar everything looked. The houses all blended together in the darkness, and the dimly lit streets twisted in ways I didn't recognize. Then Abigail suddenly stopped dead in her tracks. "I think we're lost," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The words sent a cold wave of panic through me. My throat went dry. "No, we're not," I said quickly, more to convince myself than her. We just need to retrace our steps." But the truth was, neither of us knew the neighborhood well. During the day, it had seemed so simple, just a straight walk to the river. But now, in the quiet isolation of the night, everything felt different. The streets stretched out endlessly in every direction, unfamiliar and empty, as if we had wandered into a different world entirely. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the area. There were no street signs we recognized, no landmarks that told us where to go. Every turn we took seemed to pull us deeper into the maze of darkened streets, disorienting us even further. And the van was still there. It wasn't speeding toward us, wasn't honking or flashing its lights. It just lurked in the distance, creeping down the road like a shadow, its presence heavy with silent menace. Whoever was inside wasn't in a hurry. They were waiting, watching. My pulse pounded in my ears as Abigail and I picked up the pace. We didn't run. We didn't want to show how afraid we were, but our steps became quicker, more urgent. Every few seconds, I glanced over my shoulder, my breath hitching every time I saw the van make the same turns we did. "We need a plan," I whispered urgently. "We can't just keep walking in circles." But what could we do? The streets were deserted. There was no one around, no cars driving by, no houses with their porch lights on, no open stores where we could duck inside. It was just us, lost in the darkness, with a stranger following close behind. And at that moment, with fear gripping my chest so tightly I could barely breathe, one terrifying thought consumed me. We had made a huge mistake. Panic was beginning to set in. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst from my chest. The van hadn't gotten any closer, but it was still there, a silent threat lurking in the darkness. Every turn we took only made us feel more lost, and the streets around us seemed to stretch endlessly, trapping us in a labyrinth with no way out. I could see the fear on Abigail's face, even though she was trying to stay calm. Her breathing was shaky, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. We were running out of options, and the realization sent a cold shiver down my spine. Then, just as the panic threatened to consume us, I saw something ahead. Movement at the far end of the street. A figure. For a split second, my brain screamed at me to run, to turn the other way. But then the figure moved into the dim glow of a streetlight, and my breath caught in my throat. It was Ava's dad. Relief flooded through me so fast I felt lightheaded. He was holding a flashlight, the beam sweeping across the street as if he had been searching for something or someone. When his eyes landed on us, his expression shifted, flickering between relief and unmistakable fury. "Ava's dad," I breathed, my voice barely more than a whisper. Abigail saw him too, and in an instant the terror in her eyes melted into something else. Exhaustion, relief, the overwhelming urge to just run towards safety. Without a word, we both broke into a hurried walk, then a full sprint straight toward him. As soon as we reached him, his sharp gaze flicked between us, then past us, toward the van. I didn't need to say anything. He had already seen it. His expression darkened, and his grip tightened around the flashlight. He took a step forward, positioning himself protectively in front of us, his entire posture shifting from concerned parent to something much more intimidating. The message was clear: you're not getting anywhere near these girls. And then, as if sensing that the situation had changed, the van suddenly stopped creeping forward. For a moment, it just idled there, headlights casting long, eerie shadows across the pavement. Then, without warning, it reversed down the street, the tires screeching slightly as it disappeared into the darkness. Only when it was completely gone did Ava's dad turn back to us. "What the hell were you two thinking?" His voice was low, controlled, but I could hear the underlying anger beneath it. "Do you have any idea how dangerous this was?" Neither of us could speak. The adrenaline was still coursing through my veins, making my legs feel weak, my stomach unsettled. I opened my mouth to say something, an apology, an explanation, anything, but all that came out was a shaky breath. Ava's dad didn't wait for a response. He grabbed both of our arms, not harshly but firmly, and all but dragged us back toward the house. The walk back felt much longer than it should have, every step heavy with exhaustion and the weight of what had just happened. I could barely process it, how close we had come to something terrible, how lucky we were that Ava's dad had come looking for us when he did. By the time we reached the house, the porch light was on, casting a warm glow against the darkness. The second we stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind us, and Ava's dad rounded on us with the lecture of a lifetime. It wasn't just anger, it was fear, disappointment, frustration, all mixed together. He demanded to know what we had been thinking, why we had snuck out, if we even realized what could have happened. I stood there, eyes downcast, taking every word without argument, because he was right. We had been reckless, we had been stupid. But as his voice filled the room, I barely registered the words anymore, because all I could think about was how different this night could have ended, how close we had come to something truly terrifying, and how, despite everything, we had made it back, safe. The rest of the night passed in a blur. After Ava's dad's furious lecture, Abigail and I sat in silence, still shaken from what had just happened. Ava had come downstairs, groggy and confused at first, but the moment she saw us, her face turned pale. "You guys are okay," she breathed, her voice laced with relief. That's when we learned what had really saved us. Ava had woken up in the middle of the night to find the room eerily quiet, too quiet. She had reached out to where we had been sleeping, only to feel cold, empty blankets. That was when she knew we had been gone for a while. Panic had set in immediately. She had no idea where we had gone, no clue what had happened, but she did the one thing that mattered most. She went straight to her dad. The moment she shook him awake and told him we weren't in the house, he didn't hesitate. He threw on his jacket, grabbed a flashlight, and went out looking for us. If he had waited even a few minutes longer, if Ava had slept through the night instead of waking up when she did, what would have happened? That thought haunted me. Even though the man in the van had never gotten close enough to grab us, there was something undeniably wrong about the way he had followed us. He had waited, lurked in the shadows, trailed behind us in that slow, deliberate way. He hadn't called out to us, hadn't asked if we were lost or needed help. He had just watched. And then, the moment Ava's dad appeared, the moment we weren't alone anymore, he had driven off without hesitation. The question churned in my mind, making my stomach twist. What was he waiting for? Had he been hoping we'd stray even further into unfamiliar streets, away from anyone who could help us? Had he been biding his time, waiting for the perfect moment when we were isolated, vulnerable? Had we been minutes away from something much, much worse? I would never know the answer, and honestly, I never wanted to. That night taught us a lesson that I would never forget. At the time, sneaking out had seemed like a harmless thrill, something reckless but not dangerous. We had thought we were in control, that nothing bad could actually happen. We were just two friends looking for a little adventure, a way to make an ordinary night feel exciting. But reality didn't work like that. We had been so lucky. Lucky that Ava had woken up. Lucky that her dad had found us. Lucky that we made it home safe before anything worse happened. But luck isn't something you can count on. And that night, we learned the hard way that one bad decision can put you in a situation you're not prepared for. That was the last time we ever snuck out.